All right, it is 7 on the dot. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending the first of our 2 candidate forums for the 2023 election, hosted by the League of Women Voters of Moscow. The League of Women Voters of Moscow is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. My name is Kylie Breitzman, and I'm the current president of the League of Women Voters. Tonight's forum features candidates who are running for the Moscow City Council. All the candidates have been invited to participate in the forum and have agreed to the ground rules that we set as the League of Women Voters. Our event tonight is going to be moderated by Lauren Finns, Professor Emerita of the University of Idaho Department of Forest, Rangeland, and Fire Sciences, and she is also a current board member for the League of Women Voters. Questions have been gathered by email in advance of the event, and we're also going to collect your questions throughout the evening. Questions cannot be called from the floor, but will instead be read by our moderator. Please feel free to take an index card if you haven't already, and submit questions for the candidates. We have multiple league volunteers here tonight, so if you do need an index card, just raise your hand. If you have a question ready to go on a card, raise it up and one of our volunteers will come get it for you. The League reserves the right to review and select questions for appropriateness and to avoid duplication. Our format is as follows. Each of our candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, and then we'll move into our audience questions, where candidates will have up to 2 minutes to respond. We will then conclude with closing statements of up to 1 minute from each candidate. Throughout the evening, when allotted time has expired, candidates will be allowed to finish their sentence before the timer indicates that their time is up. To maximize time for candidates to respond to questions and give their statements, we ask that all of our audience members withhold their applause until all candidates have completed their closing remarks. Because of the number of candidates and amount of time available, we want to recognize that this is just the beginning of the conversation to introduce our candidates. If you have additional questions or if we didn't get to your question tonight, we really encourage you to reach out directly. These are your candidates for City Council. So without further ado, let's begin.
Thank you, Kylie, and let me add my welcome to everybody. We're really pleased to see such a great turnout and obvious interest in our local politics, and our political candidates. So without further ado, I'm Lauren, by the way. Without further ado, let's have our candidates give their 2-minute introductions. We'll start at the far end, and that's Bryce Blankenship. Please say your piece.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this event, and thank you all for attending. It's wonderful to see the community come out to be engaged in this candidate forum, to care about the community as we move into the election cycle. So I'm appreciative to see all of you here tonight. As mentioned, my name is Bryce Blankenship. It's also written right there, just in case. And I've been in Moscow for 12 years. I'm a senior instructor teaching philosophy at the University of Idaho. And originally I'm from Kansas City, so I moved here for graduate school, so I'm also a proud alumnus of the University of Idaho. Go Vandals. And the first time I ever heard about Moscow, Idaho was in 2007. I was working at a camp in New Mexico, and I came up to this person, and he was wearing an Idaho sweatshirt. And I said, "Is that the University of Idaho?" And he said, "Uh-huh." And I said, "Where is that?" And he goes, "Moscow, Idaho." And I remember my answer to this day. I said, "That place sounds made up." And I love thinking back to that story, and I love thinking back to that moment, because flash forward now to 16 years later, here I am sitting at this candidate forum, running for city council for a town that I thought was made up. And I'm running for city council here in this town because I love Moscow. Like I said, I've been here for 12 years, and I love so much about this community, and I'm excited to dig in even more. I'm excited to give back to what it's been giving me, and especially as we think about moving into the future, I'm really excited to think about ways to think about sustainable development, ways to think about effective and intentional water management, and also to think about kind of continuing to preserve the integrity of the community. So I look forward to speaking with you all tonight.
Thank you, Bryce. Joe?
I'm Joe Campbell. Thanks to the League of voters and also the speaker series for putting this together. Excuse me. The green light is on. I should move it up. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I just retired. If you include graduate school, I've been teaching for over 30 years, and now I'm not teaching anymore. I have a lot of time on my hands all of a sudden because teaching is a very difficult job. My wife and I have lived here for, we both have 2 kids who graduated from Moscow. I just finished my 9th co-edited book volume that was just released last year before I retired. And then another interesting thing is I grew up in poverty. It's kind of a complex story. I had a single mother, brother who went to Vietnam actually. I had a sister who's in a wheelchair. She's still in a wheelchair now. I played football for a while. It starts to sound like Forrest Gump. But along the way, I think I've learned a lot going from poverty to the opportunities I have now. The key is opportunities. Opportunities are not equal to all people, and I want to make opportunities for education, opportunities for housing, opportunities for employment, opportunities of all kinds. I think that we're a stronger democracy when people have opportunities that kind of pay for themselves. And so I'm interested in helping. And I love this town. I love working with people, and I'd like to continue working as a member of the City Council.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Drew.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be here with everybody tonight. There's some familiar faces and a lot of new faces, so it's good to have new friends. As mentioned, I'm Drew Davis. 12 years ago, I moved to Moscow with every intention attending the University of Idaho, where I graduated with a bachelor's and master's in architecture. I planned on moving 2 years after it was done. I stuck around because I fell in love with the landscape. More importantly, I fell in love with the people. For me, growing up, I grew up with a lot of like-minded people, which there's nothing wrong with that. But me coming to Moscow, people have different beliefs, and those beliefs, people respect their difference of beliefs. And that's something that I value, and I continue to value as I've been appointed to City Council this last year. For me, my training in architecture is what I find important and a perspective that I bring to council. I work a lot with infrastructure in different municipalities across the western United States. Currently, I do a lot of work in Seattle, Washington. I'm very proud that I work on affordable housing projects. For me, this is something that's facing the Palouse. It's facing, more importantly, the city of Moscow. As I look at this and I look at what I've done on a professional level, I have the ability to talk to legislatures in a professional way of how we can, as I've learned things from other states, how we can bring that not only to our state of Idaho, but to Moscow. Most importantly, I'm a dad. I have 4 kids. You can see me in our parks pushing my kids on the swing. I guarantee you can hear my kids at the park. And you can find me at the swimming pool on these hot days in the summertime. I love the city services that Moscow provides, and for me it's really important that we maintain them and we find other ways to bring them to the city of Moscow. Look forward to talking to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Evan?
Hi, my name is Evan Holmes. It is a tremendous pleasure for me to be here and see a lot of familiar faces, most of which I haven't seen because of COVID for several years. Thanks to the League of Women Voters, thanks to Kylie and Lauren. And when I'm on the subject of thanks, I have to say that comes to mind every day for Nancy and I. We've been here we're starting our 35th year here, and gratitude has driven us to a lot of the things we've done and felt about this place. We raised 2 kids here. We've both worked for the school district at times. I have volunteered for a number of city boards and commissions, and most importantly, probably 9 years on the Board of Adjustment appointed by 2 different mayors, one of whom is here tonight. Moscow to me has always meant access to opportunity for everyone. And Nancy and I have taken advantage of that and started a couple businesses ourselves. And now my construction business is winding down as I am winding down. And so it frees me to have time, and I certainly have the energy and the desire to serve you in the capacity of a city council member. And we've got some issues coming up. We have the issue, as already mentioned, with affordable housing. We have the cause to think harder about our response to the water problem here with climate change potentially exacerbating that. And we have to strengthen our connections to the groups that provide support in the community, that partnership that we have in order to meet the growing social needs that I see coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Sandra?
I'm glad Evan stood up first. I was thinking of this earlier. My friend Louise in the back always says, speak into the microphone and stand up so we can see you. I know this because I've gone to a lot of meetings, and I'm thankful for that. So Louise, thank you for getting us to stand up. What an honor it is to be here with the League of Women Voters. The League is very close to my heart. I've been a member of League for several years, and that's really what got me going with the non-political process of politics. And I'm so thankful for that, for all the work they do. And it truly is humbling to be here with the League, so thank you for that. My name is Sandra Kelly, and I'm excited to run for another term. I've been on council for 4 years, and it's been a humbling experience. It's truly been an honor to serve all of you, and I hope you will allow me to do that again. I continue to bring experience to the job, not just through the 4 years at City Council, but my entire background, from being a sports writer here in Moscow to going back to school and becoming an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer and serving in that capacity, to helping different political organizations, serving on boards, many boards, and serving on commissions to learn about city work, and really just trying to be a public servant in the best ways possible. And to me, that means serving. I do love to serve, and I love to talk to people, and I love to try and find solutions to problems. There are always going to be problems out there. Absolutely, there's some water issues going on, and I'm hoping that more questions come up because I think there is some headway being made there. I also love the parks, and you will see myself and my favorite 5-year-old neighbor and probably the world's best dog, Beatrice Bean, who will also not be quiet, but who is delightful. I'm so grateful for our parks and all that they do. I adore Moscow. I adore the eclecticness that it has. I want to keep pushing for diversity and understanding, to just take care of each other out there. And that's what we need to do. This is a big, lovely, amazing city, and I want to keep it that way. And we have work to do, and we can do it. And I've just been grateful to be a part of that. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Sandra. And last but not least, Nathan.
Thank you, everyone, and especially thanks to the League of Women Voters. Thank you for hosting this and moderating this event. This is very exciting for me. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm the youngest person at the table right now, and it's very exciting to be the youngest person here. I've gotten so much support for being so young and doing this. But a little bit about myself. I originally came from the Boise area, Meridian specifically, and I came up here for college about 5 years ago. I started out in psychology, and I took a little bit to figure out what I wanted to do with myself, as every young person does, but I settled on political science, which I finished my bachelor's in this spring, and I'm just finishing out my minor in economics this fall. I am so happy to be here in Moscow. I've loved every single second that I've been here. I was here over the pandemic, and I'm so excited to continue to serve in the capacity that I can. And I'm excited to give the fresh perspective that I think the City Council needs from its younger voters. That especially is my big point. I want to be the kind of person that gives a perspective that is unique to its youth, because I feel like that is missing in the city. A couple of things about myself. I joined the Idaho Army National Guard in 2018. I'm currently a sergeant, and my specialty is in religious backgrounds. I am a bodyguard, but most importantly, I make sure that soldiers of any faith background can practice their religion no matter what it is, no matter what disagreements I have with it. My job is to make sure that people can do what they need to do. And I want to bring that onto the City Council too. I want to ensure the freedoms that the American Constitution gives us, and I want to bring that to you, the citizens of Moscow. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Nathan. If you would pass that down. So what we're going to do is we're not going to start at the very end. We're going to move the beginning person. So Joe, you're going to be first. And then the next time we'll move it down again. All right? So, yeah, so that one person's not always first, right? Okay. So some of you have addressed the next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because not all of you did address it. And for those of you that did address it, maybe you can unpack it a little bit more. So this question was sent to us by email. And it's, what do you see as some of the biggest problems that Moscow faces today? And how would you seek to address it as a member of the city council? So Joe, you go first.
Interestingly, when I've been walking around talking to people, one issue that has come up is trees. I know that there's a tree commission. I tried to go to the meeting yesterday. There was nobody there. Pullman, I think, right now has to get rid of a whole bunch of trees. And actually, one of the people that came up to me said, if, you know, can we, I mean, one person mentioned that, well, sorry. But trees is a relatively minor problem. I think housing is a huge problem. Another issue that people have come up to talk to me about. I had one woman come up and tell me that, you know, she's been here with her family trying to find a house. Actually, we're empty nesters, and it's difficult for us to sell our house, even though it's too large, because we can't find another place to rent that would give us, you know, would be equally affordable. So I think that this is something that affects people of all ages and all income backgrounds, housing. And then another thing that I think I want to talk about is just the, sorry. Boy, I'm really messing this thing up. But I do think that housing is one of the key issues, and I think it's something that we could deal with. Another thing, I went to, this is sort of thinking long term, but I'm really interested in restorative justice. I went to a program with the Human Rights Commission the other night. I think that that's something that we could work into various forms of community affairs, and something we should look into also. Thank you, sorry for
Thank you, Joe. It's always hard to be the first one, isn't it? Drew, do you want me to repeat the question, or are you okay with it?
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. So what do you see as some of the biggest problems Moscow faces today, and how would you seek to address those problems as a member of the city council?
Well, that's a great question, and I think there's we've all seen problems, and we've all faced problems in our city. From my perspective, from being on planning and zoning, and being on council this last year, we've all felt the tension of difference of belief. We all have our individual beliefs that we hold dear to us. For me, I don't want to change your beliefs. I don't want you to change your neighbor's beliefs. I want our beliefs to grow us together, and I know that's possible. How I want to do that, and how I've been doing that, is we need to lead with compassion. I'm going to lead with compassion as I've done. I think we need to understand people. And it's okay that someone believes something different than you, but we can't let our differences become battle lines. We see this all the time, and I think compassion goes a long way in our community. For me, again, I mentioned it, but of course, I'm a building nerd, and anything with the infrastructure, I'm going to talk about it. But that being said, again, housing is really critical. Having shelter, people that don't have that, we've seen this in our community, And that's unfortunate. As we go home tonight, I think we should all be grateful for what we have. But how we can solve this, I think there's a variety of ways. Again, I've talked about how I understand the built environment. I can talk to the legislature. We can work on ways for Idaho, but what we can also do on the private sector is look for private, public-private partnerships, also known as P3s. I think as we engage in different aspects, we can bring these to the table, and again, we can find things along the way. I know I have the ability to have these hard conversations, and but again, nothing can replace what you can do on a personal level. If you know someone's having a hard time, I think as a community we need to step up. We need to help these people. Policy is important, but personal accountability and helping our neighbors is also critical. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Evan, do you want me to repeat the question, or you got it? You good?
Yeah, I can go. As they said, affordable housing is a big thing on my mind and of people I talk to. There's ripple effects from that as people go into housing and devote a bigger percentage of their income to meeting house payments and taxes. There's less money for retail, so we can suffer some losses that way, and they'll also become less supportive of property taxes. Those ripple effects can play out in ways we don't like, and so I think the city council has to increase their or strengthen their relationships with private entities like Family Promise, like the Affordable Housing Trust and things like that, to meet the potentially growing needs of those that are crunched by the housing thing. And in the meantime, city council and working with the county could go into area of impact or similar and try to have more zoning that would allow for manufactured home type developments with smaller lots that would allow for planned use developments where you might put more structures on lots than you normally would. We could allow for zero lot line development in some areas like Tiempo Commons did. And so once again, you get a little higher density of housing in the same amount of land, because in the immediate future, we have to work with the land that's available. And then I also have concerns, as Joe mentioned, about climate change potentially affecting our shade trees, and also that morphs into the never-ending concern about our aquifer and our water supply, and I think we need to begin funding what would eventually be the solution to that, even though we don't know specifically what it is, except that it would be expensive. And so there's three big things that come to mind immediately. One thing I throw out there is also the ability to help people age in place. And thank you much.
Thank you, Evan. Sandra,
Thank you, Lauren.
repeat the question.
No, I think we're good. You know, one of the hardest things is there are a lot of poor people out there. I have had the privilege and honor and the sadness of being able to work with the multitude of food banks in the Palouse region. I'm on the board of Inland Oasis, which holds a Westside Food Pantry, and it's grown and grown and grown, which we're grateful for. When I was at Washington State University, one of my jobs ended up being starting what is now the Cougar Food Pantry, because students didn't have enough food. I moved to the University of Idaho just over a year ago, and one of my jobs there is to run the Vandal Food Pantry. And I get over 20 students a day needing food, and we get adults looking for food, and we get a variety of people looking for food. And it just is a ripple effect. I'm really grateful that Drew talked about the public and private partnerships. I do hope we can to increase on those. We need things bigger than Family Promise, and I love them a lot. Volunteered there, they're great, but we need bigger than that. We need bigger than the Affordable Housing Trust. We need to find ways to find people places to live, because if people don't have a place to live, they're couch surfing, they're living in cars, or they're trying to find hovels. So that's an issue, and it's one that really gets swept under the rug because generally we try to be a happy place, but that is an issue. I also think we do look to the other things that are critical. Water. I mean, water will be, I know it's going to come up later, so I'm going to save my little stump on water, but that's always there. It's always looking at us. I think we also have to think about our aging infrastructure. You know, one of the things that worries me the most are clay sewer pipes, right? I have nightmares about our clay pipes. I really do. Like, oh no, what happens? How can we fix those? We need to get those fixed. I do have nightmares about it. And we also need just to have a vibrant downtown. I love our downtown, but it needs some energy. and it costs money, and really I want people to eat before we have to worry about that. But it's a variety of things, and that's what council is great about. It's a great way to have the multitude of things come up. We talk about them with departments, we talk about them within our groups, and then we vote on those things, and that's what we're prepping for, and that's why this is so important.
Thank you, Sandra. Nathan?
I guess the biggest issue for me that I've seen in the past few years of me being here, this city is constantly at war with itself, is what I've seen. And I want to be the kind of candidate on city council that brings healing and builds bridges between the different, diverse communities in this city. I constantly see camps of people bicker and go on fights about the most ridiculous things that end up having no impact on how we live our lives. I want to be the kind of city council member that pushes this community to be a single community. Unite us under the fact that we all live here. We are all together, and we have to live life together without dealing with the idiocies that come with life. Now, I think everybody else on this stage has talked about housing, and that is very important to me, but I'm going to talk about something that's actually equally important to me, and that is being citizen-centered. I think most times politicians have a very good and accurate reputation of being distant from their citizens. I do not want to be the kind of city councilman that is distant from the citizenry, but rather be someone that is active in the community. I want to go out and have conversations with the citizens, with business owners, with the homeless, with the people that need it most. That's very important, not just to me as an individual, but frankly to the city. We are all here together. We need each other to survive, and we need each other to thrive. I want to facilitate that as a city councilman. Another big problem for me, I would say, is the water crisis. I hope and pray every single day that we do not run out of water. It is a big deal to me. I want to make public and private cooperations to make sure that our city continues to have water, electricity, and all utilities it needs to thrive. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bryce?
I can do a little bit of the work here. I like this standing business too. It kind of mirrors my feel in the classroom, so it feels nice to actually see you all. So this is what I look like for those in the back. As it relates to the question at hand, the two primary areas that I think Moscow should be concerned about, and as we can kind of address them moving forward, as has been stated, is aquifer and water management. And one thing that I'm really encouraged, but also very intentional about paying attention to the conversation surrounding water use and aquifer management is all the various stakeholders at play. Right? When we can think about that in terms of Moscow, Pullman, Latah, Whitman, Idaho, Washington, I think it's really important for all of us to kind of pay really close attention to how we can think about intentional decisions moving forward with regards to the potential diminishing aquifer that we all benefit from on a daily basis. And so I'm excited to work with organizations throughout the Palouse, and I recently attended the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee workshop about 2 weeks ago at the Best Western to be involved in those conversations. And it was really meaningful to hear about some of the potential alternatives that we would have to explore down the line. And being part of those conversations as a city councilor is tantamount. Right? Like that is, I think, one of the roles of a city councilor is to be involved in those conversations, listening to those that might know more than you, and being able to effectively, again, make decisions that reflect the problem at hand. And then second, as has been discussed, is access to affordable housing. And I think that Moscow is clearly now getting smaller, and we all recognize that. We all kind of have probably our own thoughts about that. And so how do we, again, manage that effectively with regards to zoning issues, with regards to thinking about more creative incentives for access to affordable housing as it relates to, again, Moscow moving into the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. So you've all touched on things that we have questions about, and you talked about them in a more general way. So we're going to get into the weeds a little bit because some of the questions get into the weeds. And Drew, you're going to be the first one to address it. So water, I'm going to read this. It's a long question. The groundwater supply in the Palouse Basin is declining. Water experts and policymakers are considering several water supply alternatives to sustain local communities. Among possible scenarios is a proposal to pump water up to Moscow from the Lower Granite Dam pool near Hawaii Canyon, on the Snake River. What do you think about that? And let me just add, what do you think about other alternatives that may have been proposed?
Thank you. That is a long question, but I'm ready for it. I brought notes. When I was going to grad school, I had the opportunity to work in the CRC, the Center for Resilient Communities, where I did research with two really talented professors that study water across our nation. The area of impact that we did with the National Science Foundation was the Snake River aquifer around Twin Falls area for geography. I recognize it's not here. There's a couple of key things I learned from that in a year. While doing research, I brought stakeholders and scientists together. I'm not going to pretend, I'm being very transparent. I'm not a hydrologist, I'm not a geologist, but I am a citizen here. And the thing that we need and needs to happen is we need to bring these talented people together that have the expertise. And I understand that it is declining. And I understand that there's been solutions, but bringing people together and talking about it is really important in facilitating that conversation. I've done it in the past, I'm going to do it again. In the terms of options that we've talked about, and I know there's been a lot of talk recently, literally in the last 2 weeks about this. I grew up in southern Idaho where we pump water out of the Snake River to feed our fields with water. It's been a solution. I don't know if that's a great solution, to be quite honest with you. I know it is one. I think a solution is capturing the water that we have here on Moscow Mountain through our streams. There's a lot of volume that moves through our little streams here. You'd be surprised. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I want to capture that. I want to create a reservoir. Those are things that I find, that's a solution that's important to me. But I know there's other people that are making decisions, but that's something that I feel is a better alternative. Yeah, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you. Evan, do you want me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. The question was about pumping water from Washington to here, and like all of you, I'm willing to entertain the notion of any solution that works that we can afford. That raises a red flag to me, that particular one, because as in southern Idaho, they know you run into water rights issues. You get into the whole question of who actually owns the water. And, you know, we may be able to buy water for a while. You wonder with changing climate if there's less snowpack in the places that provide that water, if all the water that is in those rivers will already be spoken for. So I have to say that eventually we would have to impound water either through cisterns or a reservoir or something like that to meet our needs. And there's also the possibility of changing our building codes to allow, if the state will allow it, gray water collection so that each household in town, especially newly built ones, would require less water to operate on a day-to-day basis. So it's a combination of things, but we're going to run into water right issues before we get it all done.
Thank you, Evan. Sandra?
Thank you. We are going to run into water rights issue before it's all done, but those water right issues are going to come up with almost every plan that we have, which is tough. Recently, I serve on the Palouse Basin Aquifer Committee and have had the chance to go to their monthly meetings and workshops. And true, there's no easy solution. The happy thoughts on this are, however, while the aquifer is declining, we have about 50 years or more worth of water. So it's not like day after tomorrow it's going to go dry. That doesn't mean go out and water all your yards and go crazy. That is not what I'm saying, right? But we can breathe a little bit and try to figure out some good, solid solutions. Looking at the opportunities that Avista has given and what they're trying to pledge, possibly pumping out from the Snake River isn't the worst solution. We look at climate change and how is that going to affect the snowmelt on Moscow Mountain? Will that allow the streams to continue? We don't know. That is a real gray area, but what we would take out of the Snake River is not that great. So I don't know if that's the best solution, but that's one they're really looking at, and they're so committed to looking at that, they're actually now moving a little bit forward on this, and forward on a couple other plans, but to actually start working on those water rights issues. This is not a new thing to PBEC. They know water rights are an issue. We already work within 2 states, and just transporting water back and forth over across the boundaries is hard. And then when you have to talk to different counties and work with the Nez Perce tribe, it does get complicated, and folks are working on that. Oddly, 4 years ago, I was not at all optimistic about what we were looking at in our water situation. But now, after working with folks and going to more workshops and being an active part of it and not being afraid to ask what I always think of are the dumb questions, I feel much better about where we're at. I can't tell you what the best one is, but I can say that pumping it is not as crazy as it sounded to me before, and I'd love to talk to you more about that now or at another time.
Thank you, Sandra. Nathan?
Well, I will tell you what, I am not worried. I am going to be very hardworking about the water crisis, but I'm not worried about our city one bit, because I know we are all tenacious people. We are people that are going to work hard to make sure that we can thrive here. I am not worried about us one bit. However, the question was specifically about pumping from Washington. I am more in favor of looking at Idaho and resources for pumping water up into our city, mainly because I want Idaho and I want us as citizens to be more in charge of this than interstate agencies would be. Avista, I think, is going to have a lot of really good solutions for this if we push this specific way of thinking about it. But this comes down to being citizen-centered. I think if we push for things that we have control over, we can solve this crisis together as a community. Because what it comes down to is how we, the people, solve this. It is our tax dollars that are going to be paying for whatever project that is put forward. And so pushing for the least expensive but most effective option is going to be what's best. I am in favor of drawing water from other Idahoan sources, whether it's from the Snake River or from up north. As long as it's from Idaho, as long as it's from less expensive resources, that is what I'm in favor of.
All right, thank you. Bryce?
I'm going to get my steps in today. Thank you for the question. And as mentioned, and I appreciate the weeds question. As a philosopher, I love diving into stuff, and especially when it comes to issues that are so important, such as water and such as access to water. This clearly matters deeply to the whole community, and as I said, kind of the greater Palouse region. And so I think that one thing that we need to consider, and one way that we can address some of these issues surrounding water, is, again, listening to the experts. As a philosopher, I too am not a hydrologist, right? But clearly living in this town and living in this community, we have experts. We have people that know the science, that know the effective management, and as a city councilor, acting as a conduit between those experts and the members of the community. And also being active in those conversations to think through effective and intentional decisions when it comes to water. As it relates to pumping from the Snake River, again, there's complexities with that, as has been discussed, but also there are other alternatives that we can explore, from whether that be reservoir creation, whether that be from other runoff areas in our state, maybe across the border. There's always kind of alternatives to explore. And in that space, in thinking about water, I also think that there's something that Moscow has done, from the best of my knowledge, of encouraging citizens to also consider how they use water from their own personal use, right? The city has some incentives, and I always mispronounce this word, but I think it's giroscaping, it starts with an X, which essentially is kind of reducing one's own water usage for one's own yard, one's own landscape. And so just, again, kind of thinking about things on our own individual level, but also on the collective level, I think is really important. And luckily, living in this community and living with people that care very deeply about this issue, both at present and for years to come, we will kind of find, I think, really meaningful and effective solutions to this, because it matters very deeply.
Thank you, Bryce. Joe?
Thank you. I did a little research today, actually, on the water situation, so I have the solution. No, I'm only kidding. But I was just amazed at how large the Palouse groundwater basin is. I mean, just to give you a sense, it goes all the way about 8 miles north of Palouse and all the way about 5 miles north of the Snake River, all the way down there. But nonetheless, I think we have to explore all these options, because the fact is we use more water than we're collecting. So it is decreasing. I do want to point out, one of the things I found out is that water usage has decreased per capita in the last 70 years. 30% in the Pullman WSU area and 43% in the Moscow U of I area. I've talked to Tom Lamar about this, and his efforts, he does a lot in these terms, but his and other people's efforts actually has reduced water consumption, but again, it's just not enough. We need to explore other resources. I think some of the concerns that Evan has are important. Certainly we should add incentives. What I like though is, I think the new way of doing politics is trying to work within the will of the people, right? And the fact that we did decline water usage somehow shows that there is some potential here. I think we have a lot of potential ways of pursuing ways of conserving water, both through conservation efforts and through exploring other avenues, getting water from other resources. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Joe. Most of you have also mentioned housing, so we want to get into the weeds there too. Maybe not weeds in your house, but as a council member, what ideas do you have or actions would you take to secure more affordable housing in Moscow? And this time we're going to start with Evan.
Well, there's short-term and long-term answers to that. We can't speak for what developers might want to do. We can encourage them to do things, and as I mentioned earlier, it would be nice in the area of impact in the county to, through zoning, encourage the development of land with smaller lot sizes that would allow for the building of manufactured homes. Within town, we could encourage more accessory dwelling units. Within town, we could encourage, and even in newly annexed properties, the use of planned use developments where you can take 2 or 3 lots and reconfigure them, do some zero lot line building and potentially put in a lot of duplexes and things like that. So those are, immediately available. I like accessory dwelling units, but there are some difficulties with our codes and zoning to maybe make the best use of those that we could, because that would allow a lot of people to help someone else with an ADU on their property as a temporary, maybe with a conditional use permit that would expire after 5 years, to facilitate bridging the amount of time we have to really solve that. Because like I said, the problems that come with housing problems are filtered down into, as Sandra said, the homeless, food pantry problems, general quality of life issues, and I also mentioned the lack of available money then for supporting businesses in town and for paying taxes, so you have more defaults on things. There's just a whole lot of things. So it's really something we have to attack in every way that we know how.
Thank you, Evan. Sandra?
Boy, would I be smart if I knew how to stop the crisis of affordable housing. What I do know is we, as a city, are really hamstrung by what we can do. We don't have the local control that I wish we did. So one of the biggest things, honestly, that we can do is to work with the Association of Idaho Cities, which the city is a member of, because they help work with our legislators. They're down there working with them all the time. They work with us, and we talk to our legislators. We talk to people that are like-minded in the legislature, trying to figure out what can we do, because a lot of times we're not able to do what we want to because we're not allowed to, because the law won't let us. We don't have the local control that we would love to have to be able to help with these things. So that's one area that I think is actually doable, right? Because that's working with people to change a law. The other thing that I think we can do is maybe try to find different ways that we can zone. Are there ways we can change our zoning ordinances? It's hard. I sat in on a handful of planning and zoning meetings, and I'm looking at my friends out here on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I'm thankful for the work that they do, and it's hard work. So it's working with the zoning laws. What can go in and what can't. Are we able to change that? And should we change it? What does that look like for water? What does that look like for development? So there are a lot of issues that go into that, but it's doable. The other thing I think we do look at is finding incentives for developers, because we can't tell the developers, you have to do it this way. We can encourage, and we can try and give them incentives, but it's basically a private business. We can't tell them, you have to do this. We don't do that to a private business. So we need to find ways to work with them before they are committed to doing that development. And all those things are possible, and it's gonna take work from all of us. It's not easy work. The developers make more money when they have big houses, right? And so to tell them, hey, don't make so much money, let's have more duplexes, smaller houses, let's put them together. We have to find a way to incentivize that. And I think that's oddly a nice problem to have to work on, because it's a doable problem, because we do talk to each other. We do reach out to one another in all different facets, and that's how we solve problems, as Nathan said, is we work together in a lot of different ways, and that's one way.
Thank you, Sandra. Nathan?
Yeah, I think all of us are hitting on some really good points, and I really like what Sandra just said about the political problem in Boise. There is a lot of political actions we could take, but we don't have the ability to do, because Boise's in charge of a lot of stuff that we're not. And housing is one of those things, unfortunately. But housing itself, I see as two problems specifically. First, it's humanitarian, and secondly, it's an economic problem. The humanitarian, it's obvious. It's obvious that we should always look for ways to get people housing. That's a very good sentiment to have. But let's break down the economics of it. Let's look at every single stage of what it means to build a duplex, an apartment building, a house. And let's look as a government of ways to build public and private cooperation of lowering the cost of construction, seeing what it takes to make sure that growth can match our rate of housing development. Because growth has been outpacing development for a long time now, and that's a problem for a city. We need to bump those numbers up. It's important for us. It's very important for me personally, because coming here when I was 19, there weren't a lot of options, and I did not want a lot of the options that were handed over to me. So I dealt with what I had. I don't want people to face what I faced when I was 19, where they are stuck with whatever they get. But the biggest part of it is looking at all of the processes that it takes to build a home, and seeing where we as a government and as private firms can cooperate to make sure the costs go down, so that rents go down and that mortgages go down. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nathan. Bryce? You gonna trot down here again?
I like it. I'm into it. Again, I appreciate the question, and I appreciate kind of getting into the weeds on this question. There's no surprise on the need for accessible housing, especially kind of in a college town, especially in a town that is not going to stop growing. And I'm a little bit familiar, and I really wish that as a city we could kind of produce ordinances and produce ordinances that encourage inclusionary zoning, inclusionary zoning, but unfortunately we are hamstrung as a city kind of from the state level to be able to do that, which would encourage developers to allocate a certain amount of their properties that they're building that would be affordable housing for those. But unfortunately that is kind of tied up in the courts as of right now in the state. The other thing that I think we should consider as it relates to access to affordable housing, and I think that as a community we should be concerned about, is that there has been a predatory practice of a particular company named Hearst & Sons that is coming around, and they've been buying a lot of the mobile home communities scattered across the Northwest in particular, and giving the residents really no time to kind of make certain decisions as it relates to raising their rent and as it relates to certain things that occur within those communities. So as a city councilor and on council, one thing that I would encourage us to do would be able to pass certain ordinances that encourage those type of companies that come into those mobile home communities to give greater notice of when they're raising rents to the residents there, that give them more time to prepare on what they can do within their means to do so. Because I think that, again, we can be really intentional and really thoughtful with how we approach issues surrounding affordable housing, because it's clearly very vast, clearly very complex. But as a community, we must do that.
Thank you, Bryce. Joe?
All right. This is not just a Moscow problem. This is a problem all across the country. If you look at graphs about income versus housing, it's just One is going up and one is sort of remaining stable. That doesn't mean that it's something that we shouldn't be concerned with. It is something that we shouldn't do. I guess maybe misery loves company. But again, like I mentioned before, this issue is something I think that affects us all. I mean, we even feel it even though we own a home, because we don't have the flexibility and the choices that we might have otherwise. I think that there are some really interesting developments in Moscow, lower income, like 400,000 below. I think the South View, East Palouse River Drive, Barley Flats area. I think some of these are very interesting. I think they might encourage other developers. It would be really nice if we could get some development from the university, the downtown area, maybe some townhouses or some apartments or something like that. I think, but I think it is something that we should work towards and work together. And again, I think it's another case in which working with the will of the people, thinking about various different kinds of incentives that we might have, both for builders and for buyers, to try to change the situation. I think this is a good example of something we could do.
Thank you, Joe. Drew?
I kind of feel I feel right now when I take my kids to the Panhandle and they see their face when I buy them ice cream. This is how kind of excited I get about it. And I feel fortunate because it's in my wheelhouse. We see the problem. All of us have felt the problem. We've probably even known people that have felt that. I felt it and I've seen it. Being a liaison to Fair and Affordable Housing this year, I've been in the, riding shotgun, if you will, in this car, and I've seen that. And there's some emotion, and that's important to me. There's people who don't have homes. That's a big deal. But I do want to talk about things that we have done, what we're going to continue to do, and something that we've done well. Nils Peterson, he runs this organization in town that is trying to get people, better housing options. One thing that we've done is they did a partnership with the University of Idaho, the architecture department. To be all fair, I'm very biased. I graduated from there. I also lecture in that department. A lot of these people are my colleagues. However, the work they're doing is critical. They're bringing in students to build these. They're teaching students skills. With those skills that they're bringing in, they're solving a problem. It's moving. We've all heard the analogy. You walk down a beach, how do you save a starfish? It's filled with them. They're throwing one starfish at a time. I know we need to do more. We have a supply and a demand problem. But some things that I've found from my personal practice, practicing architecture, is infill. Infill is critical. We look around. We've talked about accessory dwelling units. That's a big deal. If you build one, we don't want to tell you what to do with your land, but you can turn it into Airbnb. But there's people that need houses here. Secondly, is I was doing this plan for about 15 different. They're called brownstones. They're like a townhome, and they walk up. Being told to stop. I'm going to finish my sentence. Anyway, what I found with that is when I was designing that, I could have gotten 5 more of these units, which is almost like a duplex, up and down. However, I was restrained by parking. I had to provide more parking, and that's an issue. Being on planning and zoning, I know how to bring that forward. I know how we can navigate that. It's going to take time and it's going to take work. I got to be quiet now.
Yeah. Thank you, Drew. Okay. Well, the last 2 questions really are a great segue to the next question. What are your views on continuing the expansion of Moscow city limits and the increasing number of subdivisions given our water, traffic, and quality of life issues? And Sandra, you do get to start.
That's all right. I'm happy to start with this. Thank you, Lauren. Big question, though. I love that we get 2 minutes to answer a question that took like 45 seconds to ask. No, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, Lauren, that's all on me. Can you just repeat that really quick? Even though it's long, you can give me the highlights.
No worries. The question doesn't count in your time, so yeah, it's okay. What are your views of the continuing expansion of Moscow city limits and the increasing number of subdivisions given our water, traffic, and quality of life issues?
Great, thank you. You know, one of the things that it's really easy to get hung up on is that, oh my gosh, we're growing so fast. We have so many subdivisions, things are out of control. But we're growing at a rate of about 1 to 1.5%. And really, when I look at different cities and I look at different towns, if you can keep that 2 or under, that means you're doing really well. Because if you're not growing, you're going the opposite direction and then you're losing. So you have to find that balance. And sometimes it doesn't look like we have a lot of balance because all of a sudden all the building goes up, but it's a very slow and gradual process. If you start from when the developers came in, took it to planning and zoning, they went through their whole work, I mean, it really takes years. So right now the subdivisions going in really started ages ago. So in that aspect, we're growing at the right rate. And of course, when new things come in, we do look at the traffic. What is a traffic flow? One of the last questions I had about Palouse River Drive, well, where's the traffic gonna go? And one of our concerns was, is everyone gonna go on Conestoga instead of the highway? And we looked at that and we drove that. I was with one of my friends, we drove it up and down to see how long it would take to get from there to the university versus the highway, and actually it was quicker going through the highway. So those are things that, I mean, not just I look at, but everyone looks at on how this works. We're trying to help with traffic. We're already looking at the things on, I just call it disaster intersection by University of Idaho and Identity, or whatever they're called now. I don't remember, it goes so fast I forget. It's a mess, but you know, we are working on that. It's hard to work with IDT, but we are working with them to find solutions on how to have an underpass, much like we do on White, and how we can guide people through. We're building more duplexes, which is great because that does come to the affordable housing aspect. We are increasing things, our pathways are increasing. We look at the traffic flow problems. We have committees that work on that. We're looking on the climate aspect of all of that. And so growth can be scary, but the even scarier thing is to not have growth, because then your town dies. And we sure as heck don't want that. So I'm okay with how the growth goes, as long as we can keep it between that 1.5% and 2%.
Okay. Thank you, Sandra. Nathan?
Well, I think Sandra started this off on a very good note. There's nothing wrong with us growing. I think that growing the city, I mean, I am part of the growth. Me personally, I am part of that growth, and I'm happy to include more people in it. As far as quality of life goes, when it comes to this growth, it can only increase the more people that we include in our community, as long as we embrace them with open arms. There's nothing wrong with that. However, at the same time, we are going to be in conflict with what we were just talking about with water and the housing. Those are going to be crises we deal with as long as it comes with the more growth. These are things that we as a city have to deal with, but I think the city itself, the administration and the committees, they've been working very hard, which is so good to see, as far as building new infrastructure, improving the infrastructure we have, looking at the problems that we face currently. The city's doing a great job so far. I personally, as a city council member, would love to interview people, take polls, conduct research to see where the heaviest parts of growth are going to have the biggest impact. Specifically in traffic, I can imagine 6th Street, I can imagine Main Street and Washington and Jackson just being full all the time. That's not fun, that would not be good for any of us. So I'd love to talk to people, I'd love to do research, and I'd love to do interviews with people to see how we can help with that. If it's more roundabouts, I'm okay with roundabouts, it's fine. But it is what it is. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Nathan. Bryce, you're up.
Wonderful. And again, I appreciate the question here. And it echoes kind of how we think about moving Moscow forward and how we think about moving Moscow into the future. And I am appreciative and I'm excited to hear that that growth rate is something to be encouraged about. And I think that as we kind of think about that at present, we also consider that, again, moving into the future, moving forward. And as has been discussed, thinking about that as it relates to water, as it relates to affordable housing, as it relates to, again, kind of being intentional and mindful with all of these issues. One thing that I pride myself on as an educator, and especially a philosopher, is to be able to be in a room with a diverse an array of diverse points of view, an array of diverse perspectives. And I think all of these issues actually really will clearly bring about a diverse array of opinions, viewpoints, perspectives. And so to be part of those conversations and to be hopefully integral in those conversations is something that gets me really excited and gets me really passionate about doing the work for you all. Because again, these are issues that are not going away for any of us. and especially being kind of where I am at in my life as a mid-30-something. I don't own a home actually here in Moscow. I've been renting the entire 12 years that I've lived here. And so again, exploring that from a personal perspective, but also listening to those that have been in the community for so long, and knowing that I'm going to be one of those members of the community that have been in Moscow for so long, because I'm so passionate about this place, gets me really excited to dig in with and to and for these issues, because they clearly matter. And I think one way that we can address these is through listening, through conversation, and through effective management, and I'm really excited to be part of that.
All right, thank you, Bryce. Joe?
I think you mentioned actually when you raised the question first that the last question, excuse me, and this question are related. I mean, you can't be against development and in favor of affordable housing, because part of what makes affordable housing is development. So, you know, I think what Sandra said, an increase of 1.5% is probably something that we should do. It will affect quality of life, and I think that's something that we have to be diligent about. One of the things that I should have mentioned in the first question is my concern for transportation, especially, you know, the local bus or other forms of transportation. I myself used to work at WSU. I rode my bike there when I first worked there. Back when we had the Wheatland Express, I used my bike all the time. Sometimes I rode it home, sometimes I threw it on the bus. I'd like to explore other ways of that. I will actually literally get on the bus if I am elected and try to encourage people to take it. I think a lot of it is just a lack of knowledge, people knowing what's available there. And so that's something I'd like to try to work on, just the availability of alternative forms of transportation. I think that would really help in terms of the quality of life issues that were raised there, and also the traffic issues. Actually, I just want to use this as a time to say how much I love that circle at 6th Street. You know, I live off Mountain View, and it just makes things, you got to be careful. Some of those people driving down 6th Street go a little bit too fast, but, and that actually really does smooth the traffic flow around that area. That is an improvement, and we need more of that kind.
Thank you, Joe. Drew?
Yeah, so I always encourage, when I was on planning and zoning, these are topics that we talk about, bringing in land to the city, that also introduced a host of infrastructure issues that need to be considered. So to answer the immediate question is, yes, I believe we have a supply problem with a high demand, and that's going to help with that. However, we need to look at, and I took some notes here, again, transit. We have 2 bus lines going around the city right now. How are we going to get a 3rd one to these places? We want to make this accessible for all people. That's critical. So what's that look like as we're growing north and south? We know we're not growing west, but you know, another thing is we talk about, you know, as we impact our beautiful landscape. If we look at 92, if you go back and look at water, we're actually doing a lot better with water consumption to this day, which is great. I think a good part of that is because of recent technologies. I was younger in 92, I won't say, but it was pretty hard, I bet, to find a toilet that wasn't 5 gallons, right? Now it's almost impossible to find a toilet that's like that. So I'm confident that technology is going to improve over these years as we have subdivisions to make water more efficient. What we can do in the immediate, though, is we can preserve that water. I'm a big fan of bioswales. If you don't know what that is, I'm happy to send you articles on it. It's preserving the water that we gather on our surface, hardscape, when we put it back in and we're pumping it into the aquifer, right? It is a drop in the bucket, I will admit. I understand how it works. However, it also cleans the water before it goes back in there, and we're not dumping it into our stream. That's something that we need to think about and be more critical when we're talking about planning and zoning. Developers, I deal with them all the time. They're great, but they're also difficult. So talking into this stuff is, you know, what's the incentive? So great question, thank you.
All right, thanks, Drew. Evan?
So getting back to annexation, it's nice when the annexation happens along your existing arterials. We've had these discussions, especially in the 90s. Nancy and I moved here in the end of the 80s, and there was a lot of concern about an area of Moscow that had not been developed yet, and it was going to get developed, and that is all the property east of the Mountain View Road, which was, the burden was on the city council to make sure that that was developed, annexed and developed in a good way. And we can thank, there's people here like Steve Bush and Wayne Krause and others that were certainly in favor of that sort of development and assured us that it would happen in a way that we could manage. And I think we've been proven right. Like I say, the key is knowing ahead of time where that development might happen that then will require or will demand annexation, and then thinking of the solutions to the transportation issues, to the water supply, to the sewer lines, and making sure that that all is coordinated well, because we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. I could also blame those former council members for making this such an attractive town to live in, so that now we have to deal with the fact that other people want to live here. Blame them or thank them, but we're going to deal with it. And I have a lot of experience in those areas and a lot of historical knowledge, having been in the construction industry here for the last 35 years. So I'm happy to work on that for you. And in that forum that we have with the league, 30 years from now, you can thank me and damn me also.
Thank you, Evan. Okay, we have time for one more question, and you've all been great about staying on time, so I urge you to do that for this one too. Moscow City Council passed a climate action plan. Would you have voted in favor of the plan? And if elected, what will you do to ensure that the plan is followed and Moscow builds climate resilience? All right, Nathan, you're up.
Well, that is a fantastic question. I love that question. One, I absolutely would have voted for that. It's up to every single one of us to combat climate change as much as we can. It's important not just to us as a community, but really the global scale as well. And we can do our part. And this is one of the smallest steps that we can make for that. Further actions that I would actually love to do is the further electrification of government vehicles. That's a big part of it. The further usage of hydroelectric power, of alternative, wind, solar, and other forms of power that we can further power our city with. And on top of that, also continuing to push alternative uses for energy. I know the biggest topics that I've seen with Avista, what they've talked about a lot, is heating in the winter and ACs in the summer. Most of the apartment complexes in Moscow don't have air conditioning, and that is one step that the city has taken. I think if there are ways that we can continue to push efforts like that, that'd be very good for our city. One, we can lower costs. We can lower costs for renting and thus help our housing as well. And at the same time, just keep a cleaner environment. I would love to push litter as a point of contention in the city, to make sure that our city is not only climate clean, I should say, but also physically clean as well, to make sure that our streets are fine, to make sure that we're not taking up the space that we need to, and that we really live in harmony with what we need to live in harmony with. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bryce.
I'll give you your steps, Bryce.
Thanks. 1,000,000,000% I would have voted for the climate action plan. 1,000,000,000%. I actually learned today, I was very excited to get this news, that I was endorsed by the Conservation Voters for Idaho. I got an email notification earlier this afternoon, so I'm very proud to represent that title. I'm very proud to represent the fact of caring about conservation, sustainability, and thinking about renewable, clean energy. And I'm so proud to be in Moscow for so many reasons, but I'm so proud to be in Moscow for the fact that this city cares about addressing climate change, cares about addressing the climate crisis. Because there's many communities that don't. And so I really feel so lucky, and I think we all should feel so lucky to be part of a community that is intentionally caring about and thinking about ways, both as a collective and hopefully as individuals, to address kind of ways to address ways as it relates to the climate crisis. So yes, I absolutely would have voted for the Climate Action Plan, and I'm excited to be a part of conversations moving forward, both on the city level and as it relates to engaging with the community, to encourage us to all take this very seriously, to take the climate crisis very seriously, to take how we can kind of our own individual steps to address it, but also as a collective, as a community, because I think clearly we're all in it together. And that's something that I think we all need to kind of remind ourselves, especially as it relates to the climate crisis. And so what we can do as a city, I find very exciting to engage in those conversations because they matter. And they're not going to stop mattering, especially as we move forward.
All right, thank you, Bryce. Joe?
Yeah, I'd be in favor of the climate action plan too, and I think that kind of thing, you know, climate action plan is sort of indicative of the sort of politics I want to endorse going forward. I think, you know, if you look at my website, it says community equals liberty plus diversity. And part of it is just, these are kind of reminders about political thoughts that I have. And one thought is just about the concept of liberty. I think if you look at the history of the world, we've done a pretty good job with what they call negative liberties, rights. You know, but negative liberties incur obligations. and sometimes that incurs punishments. There are certain problems that might come with this positive liberties, you know, sort of emphasis of autonomy, of flourishing, and incentives, and information. So what I'd like to see is some information sessions that can help this work, and some incentives. I know Son just keeps using this term too, but it's a good term. It's a positive way of trying to get people to do things, utilize their will, give them good reasons to do good things. I'm all for trying to search those out, and I think that the Climate Action Plan is a good opportunity to investigate a variety of methods to do that. And I think coupling this with some, I haven't been to the Transportation Committee meeting. I've been busy every single time. So they might be working on this too, but I think publicity is a big part of that, trying to get the word out about transportation opportunities. And I think that will go a long way with these issues.
Thanks, Joe. Drew?
Yeah, thank you. The short answer is yes. And 2 minutes doesn't allow me to answer it, but I'll do my best here. Real quickly, growing up, I used to ride my bike to the pool all the time. My parents didn't let me ride my bike one time because there was this fire in Yellowstone and the air quality was bad. Imagine that. Today, you know, I look at my kids and they're getting to the point where they can ride their bike to the pool. I don't know if they're even able to go to the pool sometimes. Forest fires are raging. Yes, I believe that we need to be good stewards of the land, 100%. What I'm doing and what I'm going to continue to do privately and on council is, a lot of people talk about it. I do it for a profession. I make sure in our buildings. I'm part of the American Institute of Architects. I'm an associate with them. It's a nonprofit group in the Idaho sector. I help with a lot of things in the North region. 18 months ago, I was in a meeting down in Boise. I saw a legislature stand up, and I'm not beating up our legislatures. It's no one elected from this area, to be clear. He stood up and said, if I don't want to put insulation in my walls, damn it, I shouldn't have to. Exact words. Wow. If I shouldn't have to put insulation in my walls. I don't believe that. From a code perspective, we need to focus on our buildings. It's critical. I think there's small things that we can do to do that through our code. It's working with legislatures, and the key with all pertinent issues when there's misunderstanding is it's education. We need to educate builders, educate architects, educate just our citizens when you're hiring people. I know that that's something that I I'm doing and I'm going to continue to do from a platform of city council and private practice. It needs to happen.
Thank you, Drew. Evan?
Oh, it's a little bit of an aside, but I liked hearing Drew talk about being affected by the forest fires in Yellowstone, and that was 1988, 88, 89. I was still working for the National Park Service, including fighting fires in Yellowstone. I'm sorry we couldn't do better job so that you could get to the pool. But, all right, he apparently survived it okay. But I worked 20-some seasons for the National Park Service, and they hold the standard for understanding and creating understanding for conservation issues. And so the climate action plan that we like it here at the City of Moscow is necessary, even though it's symbolic, and I support symbolic gestures. The things we can do that are more meaningful, Drew talked about one of them. He and I are going to be in alignment on a lot of things, and that is increasing the efficiency of our buildings. We actually waste a lot of energy both in the construction of our buildings and then our personal ways of using them. The last two structures I've made, we've put in R30 walls and R60 ceilings, even though your code requires you to have R20 walls, 21 walls, and R50. Builders could do that already. So no code requires you or prevents you from exceeding requirements, and so there could be incentives there, and people could even undertake that themselves with their own homes. So the other thing that I would like to touch upon that we waste a lot of energy on in this town is the hauling of garbage. We spend a lot of money and a lot of diesel fuel to take our garbage to Boardman, Oregon. And if we could shorten that trip or reduce the amount of refuse in that stream, we will save a lot of energy and we will be addressing the climate actions that we need.
Thank you, Evan. And Sandra, you have the last word on this.
My goodness, wow. I love that you brought up the fire in Yellowstone in 1988. I'm also more in terms of Evan's age because I was in college then, not trying to ride my bike to the pool, and my mother was furious with me because I went and I drove to Yellowstone because I was a history major. I now have a degree in history. I had to see this historic fire. And on the part that wasn't raging and the part that was smoldering that you did all the great work on, I actually roasted a hot dog. So I wanted to be a part of it. So climate has always been an issue, and you take what you get, but we can do better. I am a huge fan of our climate action plan. Always been a supporter of it. Always want to improve on it. It's incentives, that must be the word of the day, because I do think incentives can help. They're not the be-all, end-all by any means, but they're a really great avenue to help people get started. And I think a lot of that is helping people get started. I'm lucky enough, I live with my mom, and it's great, it's unconventional, and she's my best pal, except for my dog, equal best pal. But she came from a whole different generation of folks that didn't worry about stuff. She talked to me about, yeah, we drive along and we just throw stuff out the window for fun to see how long we could see it, right? We've come a long ways in that 40, 50 years, and I'm hoping we're on that same track. I like the incentives option that we can give out. I like that people are stopping watering their lawns all the time. It took my mom a long time to get there. I'm like, Mom, I know green is beautiful, but brown, embrace the brown. Come on, it's nice too. And now she's like, you're right, the brown isn't too bad, it's okay. Right? And so we're working on these things, and they're slow. I have so many fun things that I would love to be able to do, like putting solar at the parking area of the Herc or on the roof of the pool, put little solar lights all over. It's expensive, it's hard to do, but I love that our climate action team, we actually have a team that works on this of really dedicated people. They're working on these things and they bring us really good ideas that might turn into solutions. So I look at my mom and how irresponsible she was for a while, which is fun to say, but I also look at her and think, you know, we have come a long ways, and if we can keep coming a long ways, we just might stay on top of things.
Thank you. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, but we're actually going all the way back to Bryce.
Thank you,
So
Dr.
now, and thank you all for staying within your time limit. You each have 1 minute to make a closing statement, and we're right on time. So there you go. Bryce.
Wonderful, yeah. First and foremost, again, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this. And again, second, thank you all for coming out. I think it's so encouraging, again, for you all caring so deeply about our community and about our community moving forward. And again, listening to all of us and hear about our ideas as it relates to being effective city councilors. So thank you to you all. Again, as you kind of get to know me a little bit more, and I'm always happy to have a conversation. There's never been any shortage of words, I will say. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about me and know about my positions, I'm always happy to talk. But in short, as we've discussed, things that I'm very passionate about and caring about moving Moscow forward as it relates to water and aquifer management, as it relates to sustainable development, especially including affordable housing and access to affordable housing, and also thinking about preserving the integrity and the intergenerational connectivity that makes Moscow so wonderful. If you'd like to know a little bit more about me, I'll be hanging out by the back wall there, next to that wonderful yellow canola sign. And also my website is Blankenship for Moscow, and I look forward to hopefully earning your vote on November 11th. So thank you.
Thank you, Bryce. Joe.
Thank you very much. I want to extend my thanks actually to the audience, because this is really a great crowd. It's good to see, and I think it really shows a lot of why I'm excited to run for council. This is just a wonderful town. I said before, you know, our life choices are kind of a function of our abilities and our opportunities, and opportunities are not all equal. But I think Moscow, more than any community I've ever lived in, understands that. And there are so many people out there, a lot of them are here today, who are working to extend opportunities for people. And I just want to try to be part of that too. So I look forward to hearing from you. You can contact me at joe@voteforjoecampbell.com. Please ask me questions, give me information, tell me what I need to know in order to try to serve you better, and I'm willing to do it.
Thank you, Joe. Drew?
Thanks for having me. Thanks for putting this on, and tomorrow we have also another important forum to come to, so don't forget about that. Important issues coming. I love Moscow. I love everything about it. Love the landscape, as I said, but I love the people. I love the difference, and that's what I'm here for. As I've served the last 3.5 years, I still got a lot of gas in my tank. I'm ready to charge the day, and I'm ready to help. I'm ready to serve, and I'm going to continue to serve. We need it, and we need people to lead with compassion, but we also need to think about our future. As a design professional, as a practitioner, as a lecturer at the University of Idaho, and most importantly as a father, I want Moscow to grow, but I don't want it to lose its character. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to talking to you. I'll be in the back. I'm very dyslexic, so I'm not going to say my email over because it won't probably make any sense. No joke, very dyslexic. But you can scan the QR code, and I want to listen to you. So reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Drew. Evan, your turn.
Well, everyone's been thanked. So I'll thank these guys up here for, agreeing to be here with me. I bring only 6 things to this, and they're important. That's knowledge, ability, experience, desire, time, and did I get 6 already?
It's 5.
My wife is trying to prompt me.
Gratitude.
Oh, and gratitude. She's the best. So that's what I bring to you as a city council. You have to think about whether or not you think that's enough. As you leave today or later, pick up a copy of this brochure that we've prepared about me and my campaign. Go to the website, go to my Facebook page, find out more about me, and come to see what I can bring to this position on the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Evan. Sandra?
Yeah, everyone just gets thanked because we're just really grateful that you're here. I look at the league again, I'm so thankful to have been a member of that. I look at this 1912 building and all the memories that have been made in this building and how they had the opportunity to be the board president for a few years serving here. And I say that because I show up to things. I don't do it for anything other. Give me a pair of work gloves. I'd much rather bust the tables in the kitchen here or some event or pick weeds than actually walk around. I mean, I'll walk around and talk to people, but I like to work. I call myself a border collie, and I just like to work. And I want to be your border collie. I want to herd us to the right place, to which is good. I want to protect you, everybody, including myself, to protect us from things that aren't good. I want to celebrate and roll on my back and howl and be happy when things are going great. And I want to just make sure that things are running. I want to work. I love to work. Even my grandma would finally agree that I love to work. I don't like to knit, but I love to work. And I do. I show up. I've been on many things, and I have the experience and the passion, but I know what poverty, and I know what it's like to be scared, and I know what it's like to help people, and I really hope you allow me to keep helping all of you as your city council person.
Thank you, Sandra. And Nathan, you get the last one.
Such an honor to have the last word. As well as to be here with all of you and with all these fellow candidates as well. I'm honored to be up here. And I guess concluding remarks about me. I want to bring a political philosophy and attitude of being citizen-centered. I don't like extremism or political divisiveness, and it's out of an attitude of love and admiration for this town. I don't like people that want to introduce things that make the city less charitable to itself. I think in the end, I want to facilitate a positive growth and a further community building, but past that, you can find postcards on both of the tables in the back, or if you want to check out my social medias, it's all under Tupper for Office. And I'll be hanging out in the back with the rest of the candidates as well if you want to talk to me about my thoughts, ideas, and anything that I brought up today. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here. And thank you for the long nights of doing politics out here.
All right, thank you. Let's give all of our candidates a big hand of appreciation. So, I'd like to add my thanks to all of you for the great questions that you submitted. We couldn't get to them all. We tried to consolidate some of them. But they were wonderful questions, and thank you, candidates, for your thoughtful answers, for being concise and staying on time. I really appreciate it. So, thanks again. Kylie, do you have any last words?
I'm up here. We'll be here again tomorrow night, same time, same place, 7 to 8:30 for the school board trustee candidate forum. So we really encourage you to come out, come with any questions that you have, and we hope to see you again tomorrow night. And thanks again for being here this evening with us.